recording. Is it okay to start? Oh, there we go. All right, fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me tonight for the Trail Project Forum Refresher Training Session. I'm Steph Liguori. I am the National Environmental Policy Act Specialist for the North Country Trail, the National Park Service. And as you probably saw that pop up, for your awareness, tonight's training is being recorded and will be available for viewing later if you aren't able to stay the whole session or you want to come back and look at it later. So I have a bit of an agenda here to go over what we're going to chat about tonight. We're going to go over a really brief refresher of the background. We went in depth about this last year, so it'll just be a brief reminder of the compliance program and why we're doing this. Then I'm going to go over some FAQs, some questions that I get asked pretty frequently about submitting projects. And then we'll get into a step-by-step for completing the trail project form this year. It has not changed much from last year, but we'll go through it all as a reminder of how to fill it out and what to expect. Then we'll get into some dates and timelines for what you might expect for this year and the upcoming few months with the trail project form and compliance program. And then we'll get into a Q&A, open Q&A for you to ask any questions. You can type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask those questions. All right. So in last year's training, I had introduced you to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA is a federal law that requires federal agencies to evaluate and document the potential environmental and socioeconomic impacts of their actions. And NEPA is an overarching national policy that takes into consideration all laws, regulations, and permitting that are applicable to a proposed project. So when I'm looking at a project, I could be looking at it under the Endangered Species Act, or maybe the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, National Historic Preservation Act, or as well as any state or local regulations that might apply. So that could be, that could be like wetland regulations. And then many of you likely already encounter compliance needs from your land managers or state or local agencies that you might have to work with. Why does it keep doing this? I'm sorry. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so many of you probably already encounter compliant requests or needs from the land managers you work with, or perhaps from state or local agency oversight in the project areas that you're working in. So just a reminder that under this trail project form, the National Park Service is not duplicating any of that compliance work that land managers or the local or state agencies might already be doing. The intention is to fill in gaps, such as assurance that federal requirements are completed. And then also, as a refresher from last year, this process, the goals and the aim of this process are to preserve National Scenic Trail status and integrity, to protect natural, historic, and cultural resources that could be impacted by projects, to increase the Park Services and the NCTA's ability to protect volunteers' liability by better ensuring resources are not accidentally damaged or destroyed, and also to complete compliance obligations in an efficient and streamlined timeline by informing the Park Service of needs in advance of construction. And then also to inform and increase the Park Service's ability to get your chapter any supplies that you might need from the Park Service or needs. It can also inform the Park Service of potential funding opportunities. However, the submittal of a project form does not necessarily guarantee funding for a project, but it does inform the Park Service of projects or project needs that might exist in advance, and can enable us to pursue that funding if the opportunities become available. However, we don't know what those funding opportunities are until they become available. And in most cases, you have to submit those projects 2 years in advance to be considered for funding opportunities. This process helps inform us of those potential opportunities. And then this next slide is a high-level reminder of what that process is. Today's webinar is focused on the step 1, which is where the chapters are annually submitting planned projects via web form during a 1-month submittal open period. This periods will start this Wednesday on September 1st. And that is essentially the only part of this process that the chapters are involved in, but the rest of the process going on after they're submitted is that the NPS and NCTA are doing an initial review and determination of what's needed. And then your chapter will be notified of the estimated compliance timelines a few months later. If needed, landowner coordination might occur. And then the Park Service would complete any of those compliance tasks or gaps that are identified. And this can widely vary on what those needs are. And then finally, the Park Service would obtain signatures and inform you that your project is good to go for construction, including any possible mitigation or recommendations that might be associated with it. Okay, so then these next few slides, I wanted to go through some frequently asked questions. These are questions that I've been seeing come in recently, and I wanted to talk through some of them. One that I see a lot is, what is a project that needs to be submitted? This flowchart was available last year in the compliance process document that was sent to your chapters, but I'd love to go through it because it really is an essential first question to ask yourself. What is a project? So if you're looking at this flowchart, the first thing you could ask is, will your action disturb resources in a manner where they are removed or changed? This could include disturbing the soil, vegetation, and also any structures. If the answer is no, then it's not a project. So this could be non-disturbing activities like having a planning meeting, doing some scouting, or doing some flagging. If the answer is yes, it might be a project. So you would continue down the flow chart, and then you could ask yourself, is your action a regular maintenance activity? And I'll just go back to that and saying that if you are, where the no is, if you are scouting and flagging, the act of scouting and flagging itself is not a project that needs to be submitted. But if you are at a point where you are scouting and flagging, then you probably have a project that could be submitted that you are scouting and flagging for. Okay, so continuing on to our yes, is your action a regular maintenance activity? So this might be the regular mowing that you do on existing trail. You might be putting trail blazes or updating and fixing existing signage. You could be doing the minor in-kind replacement and repairs to existing and non-historic structures, amenities, parking lots, and roads. By in-kind, I mean fixing or maintaining existing trail and features where the location and design of that feature is not changing. And for these types of activities, we're working on another sort of coverage. Another thing that might be a regular maintenance activity is repairing deteriorated or damaged existing trail. So some of the key words here are existing, non-historic, and in kind. So if your answer is yes, that is not a project that needs to be submitted. Regular trail maintenance activities are not projects for the trail project form. If your answer is no, it still might be a project. So you would continue down your flow chart. And that next question is your action new construction of trail? So this could be new trail reroutes, new construction of a structure. So it could be a boardwalk, punch-in, etc., or an amenity. So a campsite, a parking lot, a tent pad, things like that. If the answer is still no, then contact either your RTC or you can contact me just to clarify and discuss exactly what your action is. And if there's still not an answer, I would say when in doubt, just submit it via the trail project form and we'll figure it out. But if your answer is clear and it is a yes, that is a project that should be submitted via the trail project form. Okay. And then the next question I am frequently asked this year is, should I resubmit projects that I submitted last year? And in almost all cases, the answer to that is no. The NPS, I still have all the information and projects that your chapter submitted last year, and I'm working through them based on their deadlines, timelines, and complexity. I will reach out to your chapter and or your state's RTC to check in on those projects, ask questions where there's gaps of information, check in on the deadline and timelines. So in almost all cases, you don't have to resubmit them because we're going through those pre-existing deadlines and timelines. If there is a significant change in the design or the location or your timeline or any of your deadlines, please inform me. And if those changes are significant enough, I might ask you to resubmit it as a new project, but in most cases you should not have to resubmit. But please let me know if there's any significant changes of that nature. So this year, your intent is to submit any new planned projects for 2022 or beyond, or any of those that were not submitted last year that maybe you've formulated and finalized it a bit more, but you never got around to submitting it last year. So I would submit it this year. And just a reminder that your chapter does not need every single detail when submitting. You don't have to know the exact, the very exact location. You don't need to have the exact, say, reroute planned at that point. And any projects you might have planned in the next 1 to 5 years should be considered for submittal via the trail project form. So a final frequently asked question I'm asked is, did the NPS complete the compliance process on any projects this year? And the answer is yes, we did. So just some stats. I think people seem to like the stats when I give the answer, just helps visualize it a little bit more. Over 100 projects were submitted last year, and about half of those were on U.S. Forest Service or other federal land. So the Park Service is not completing compliance for projects under other federal agencies' management or purview, though we do complete some due diligence with the U.S. Forest Service for submitted projects. So of those that are on non-federal land, there was about 34 that were identified with a potential for implementation in 2021 or a desired implementation in 2021. So of those 2021 projects, the simple pie chart shows the process on those 34. About 47% or 16 of those projects have the documentation or the compliance completed to the level that the Park Service takes it. So some of these were as easy as just looking at it and determining that no additional compliance was actually needed. And then some of these required a bit more work on the NPS side. And of those that were completed, the Associated State RTC, as well as the project leaders identified on the form for that project, did receive an email or a phone call from me stating that the NPS completed its compliance review, and as well as a listing of any mitigation measures or recommendations that were identified. And just a reminder that compliance does not end with a signature in a document. So while the NPS's compliance might end with a signature on a document, we might inform you that we have gotten to that point. You should read through that email and review any of the potential follow-up actions. Lots of times it includes things like making sure you're continuing to coordinate with the landowner, things like that. Most of them are pretty simple or already expected. And that's part of the project's compliance, even if we're saying the NPS has completed their compliance review, as those follow-up actions. And then continuing in our pie chart, about 29% or 10 of those projects are currently in progress for completion this year. This does not include projects that are currently in progress for completion in 2022 or beyond. And then finally, about 24% or 8 projects that were originally identified as a 2021 project have not been started yet. The primary reason for this tends to be landowner associated delays. For transparency's sake, there were some project delays on the NPS side. This was due to some unforeseen holdups in the NPS contracting office, which was outside of our control, unfortunately. 2021 projects that were delayed, we're still expecting to complete before the end of the year. We did expect some bumps in the road in the first year of this program. We expect the process will continue to get smoother and more efficient as we have an earlier awareness of long-term project plans and learn lessons. All right. So those are the frequently asked questions, but at the end when we have the Q&A, please bring up any other questions, or if you want more information on any of these or more expansion, let me know. Okay, here is the link to our trail project form, and I will share the screen with the form. So the next step in this webinar is we're just going to walk through an example project. This link is not currently active, but it will be when the submittal period starts on September 1st. Your chapter should have received a link, your chapter leaders, and I think I sent it to your chapter emails. This link in an email from me. This link is also available on the NCTA's main webpage on the volunteer dropdown. So let me share the screen with the form so we can all see that. Okay, this is the map, but it's on this screen. I think. Can you all see the form right now? Actually, let me know. What are you looking at?
Had a map up a moment ago.
Okay, hang on. How about now?
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, I see it now.
Great. So this is this year's form. There are a few updates to the form this year, but overall it's very similar to last year. So if you remember last year, a lot of this might jog your memory, which I'm hoping this refresher does. At the very top of the form, we still have our help section.
Hang on, Steph. You flopped back over to the association's webpage. You're not on the. There you go.
Oh, okay. I'm back on the form now.
Yep.
Perfect. So in that email that I sent to your chapter leaders as well as your chapter emails, there is a updated tutorial for that this year, and that tutorial walks through every section of the form step by step with an explanation. So if you, some people were telling me how it helps to have the form up on one screen and the tutorial up on another as you're filling it out, and you can click this link and it'll bring it up. Here's the last year's recording of this, of the training, and we'll put up, replace it with this year's refresher training so it's up to date once it's available. And then we also have my contact information, and you can also, of course, contact your regional trail coordinator for any help while you're filling it out. So I'm going to just do an example, a pretend project, and fill it out step by step with you, and we'll go through it, go through the entire form so we can see every step. So the NPS office is located in Lowell, Michigan. So similar to last year, I'm just going to pretend that there's a trail reroute in the Lowell area that I am planning. So for the project name, I'll enter a descriptive but brief name for my project. So I will just call it the Lowell Trail Reroute. Purely for example purposes, the Western Michigan chapter is in the Lowell area. So I'm going to choose them. It's a drop-down list. Every single chapter is here. There's an other if you happen to be in a situation where you don't see it listed for some reason. So I'm just going to choose Western Michigan. Next is the preferred project order. There was some confusion about this last year, so I hope this refresher training helps jog your memory and clear it up a bit. And of course, ask any questions at the end about this if you have them. So this is taken into consideration with all of the other projects that your chapter is submitting. So let's pretend that my chapter is submitting 3 projects total, but this reroute is very critical and needed. Maybe it has a pending deadline, something like that. So I'll give this project a number 1. If the project is of great value, but maybe it's not the most critical or necessary, it could be number 2. Maybe it's the least pressing of my projects because there's still some planning or still some landowners to figure out. I might call it number 3. So just kind of considering situations with landowners and planning and where it is in the process. And yeah, for your numbers, all valuable, but it kind of gives you an opportunity to let us know which projects you might have a pressing need or are really important to your chapter to complete for various needs. And there's explanation and description sections so you can describe those needs further down in the form. Okay, now we get into the project description section. The project leader is going to be the best person in your chapter to contact if there's questions on your project submission. So I'm going to input myself as that person, my first and last name. I will put in my email as a contact. Look, it's automatically coming up, as well as my phone number. So this way, if you ever, here we go. If there's ever any questions or something that's unclear, I can reach out and ask for some clarity on that. Your next is your desired project start date. This is generally when you would like the project to be implemented. So for my example, I've done some advanced planning and I know I want to start construction on this reroute, say in the summer, maybe about 1.5 years from now. This does not have to be an exact desired project start date. It can be a reasonable estimate. So I'm just going to say, if you know just the month and the year, I would just do the first of the month. I don't know why it's showing up like that. So I might just say June 1st, for example, 2022 for my project, and choose that date. And it looks like a little calendar drop down. Next is our project purpose. If you see one of these red asterisks, there's one here at name as well. These ones have to be filled in order for you to submit the form. The form will shoot back at you if the red asterisk ones are not filled in. It's just a functionality of the form. So this is a red asterisk question, project purpose. And this is a trail relocation. So I'm going to choose that. There is a other option if you don't see something that suits what your project, the nature of your project is. And you can type in what that other is. If I were, once I choose relocation, 2 more boxes show up under it. One is the length in miles and one is associated structures. If I were to choose linear trail structure, so things like punch-in and boardwalks and bridge, length in feet comes up. And if I choose amenity, then nothing pops up. So depending on what you choose, you might have additional options. So I've chosen trail relocation because that is the nature of my project. Based on some pre-planning, I don't know the exactly how many miles it's going to be because it's still over a year out. But I'm going to estimate it will be about 5 miles. So I'll just put in a 5 here. And there's a note here, it's numeric entry only. So just numbers. And then structures. These are any structures associated with a new or relocated trail. So the structures that are associated on a trail relocation or a new trail, that's all part of one project, as opposed to each of those structures being a separate project. So you can put that together into my trail relocation. So for this example, I know there's a wet area, say on the southern end of the reroute. So I'm just going to estimate that I'll need about 200 feet of punch-in over that wet area. So I'll just put that here as I know that's associated with my project. And I can even have a little about because I don't know the exact estimated. Okay. And then next is the reason for implementing the project. You can choose more than one because there's often more than one reason. So for this example, this reroute is necessary for scenic improvement. And the existing trail also has some major flooding and erosion issues. So I'll choose erosion water mitigation as well as route improvement for scenic. And I can choose both of those. There's also an other option. And once you choose other, you can type in what any of those other reasons, excuse me, what any of those other reasons might be. Okay. The next is this. This is optional. This is only if it's appropriate for your project, but if you have any known project deadlines, these could be things like a grant deadline or maybe a permit expiration. So for example purposes, let's say I have a grant that has a deadline and it has to be completed before, I don't know, 2025. So I can choose this and a calendar comes up again. And so I'll say it has to be done by December 2024 in order to meet this grant deadline. Oh, that's weird. It does, didn't actually choose it. 2024. Okay. Next up is any additional project details you think might be helpful, and you can just free type these in. Anything that would increase my understanding of your project or our understanding of the project. So for example, I might just give some additional details of why we're doing it. Reroute of trail is needed because a more scenic route exists nearby. An existing trail is regularly with erosion issues. There's a lot of misspellings here. Anyway, and then remember I talked about the punch-in and the wet area. So that could be a good thing to denote. There is a wet area at the southern end and say about 200 feet of punch-in are estimated to be needed. And then I think if you have a known project deadline, this is also a good spot to let us know what that is. So I can say there is an XYZ grant that requires projects completion by 2025 or something like that. Or whatever your known project deadline might be, could be a expiring permit or anything like that. All right, so that's it for describing the project. Next, we'll go into describing the location of the project. The first option here is the state. It is a drop-down, and you can pick which of the 8 states your project is located in. So I will choose Michigan. Did have a project this year that was in 2 states. So you can just choose if you have that case, you can just choose whichever one is either the most prominent, or just pick one and then please describe in your project description or elsewhere where there's an option to type, you know, that it's within 2 states. And I'll probably be able to figure it out by the maps that you provide in these next sections. So next we do ask for some sort of map to be provided. Again, you do not need to know all of your project details, including the very exact project location, because you might be thinking about a project that is maybe, you know, 4 to 5 years out. You don't quite have those details, and that's fine. And your map also does not need to be overly, you know, it doesn't have to be a beautiful Google Earth map, although I appreciate that, but it can be using the NCTA's online mapper, and I'm gonna show you some ways to provide that. And one thing is sharing a link to the map that is located on the NCTA's mapper. And you all might already be familiar with this because I'm sure you utilize the map a lot. Can you see the map right now, or do I have to switch my screen share?
Oh, you're good.
Perfect. Okay. So here's Lowell, Michigan, and I'm just going to pretend that my project is, let's say, here near the Boy Scout cabin. So in order to share a link to this location, I could zoom in a little bit closer to my location. And I can do something called share current map extent link. You navigate to your project and then you can click the share button, which, why have I this? It looks like 3 arrows. And then right here is this link, and you can simply copy and paste this link into the form. So I'm gonna copy this into my form, and then what will happen is I can put that link in and it'll come up right to where your project is located. So that's really helpful for figuring out the location. Another thing is uploading a map. This could be a drawing, it could be a photo, it could be a screen capture. It just shows the estimated line or location that your proposed route or proposed amenity would be located. We changed this section a little bit from last year to make it a bit more visible and descriptive. Accepted file types are JPEG, PDF, PNG, so images or PDFs. Docs, I don't think work. So Word docs, I don't think work in this file. And then max file size is 300, but you probably won't reach that. Something else that happened last year was chapters, is particularly if they work with the state a lot or with another federal agency, might already have a trail proposal. So it might be a document that includes a map, but also a lot of description and text. You can upload that entire trail proposal if you would like. So this way you could not only provide the map, but also all of the information that you've already provided to the Forest Service or the state. So feel free to just upload existing trail proposals if you have those, because you've already created them because of the the agency that you're working with in that area. So let's see. I did create a map. I drew it. I can show you what it looks like as an example. Let's see, let me pull it up here. Do I have it? I'm sorry, I don't know where it went. Well, it is a simple drawing. So I'll show you how to upload it. That might be actually more helpful. So there's this choose file button. I saved it on my desktop. All I did was draw a picture, I scanned it in and uploaded it. Not letting me choose file though. Why not? Sorry, one second. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I have it right here saved on. It's saved as a JPEG, the Lowell Trail reroute for the WMI chapter. Click on it and I'll click open. So as soon as you see this here, that's it. That's all you have to do as far as uploading a map. Once you click submit, it will upload with your form. So as long as you see your file name here, you should be good to go with uploading a file. So there's no more to be done there. It will automatically update when you click submit. You might already have a map to upload, so you might not need to create, like I was saying about the trail proposals, or maybe you just have it in your own planning. Feel free to just upload that. You can also create a basic map on the NCTA map again. Handy dandy map. I use it all the time. It's wonderful. I'm sure you all do as well. So to do that, what you can do is click the measure tool. And with the measure tool, you can see it looks like a ruler. And when you click it once, let's just pretend my reroute is here near the Boy Scout cabin. You click it once, it creates a little green place marker, and then you can keep clicking your way along. I'm just going to estimate my reroute is going like this. Once you double click, it will finish creating the lines. So what you could do now is you could screenshot it and then save your screenshot and then just upload that as your map upload. As simple as this. If it's just, say, a parking lot or an amenity like a campsite, you could simply do one single green indicator of the location. Yeah, so you'll have to screenshot it. Unfortunately, it doesn't print if you try to print the map when you tried to use the ruler. Another option is Google Earth. I did see some people use that. To save us some time, I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to use Google Earth just in this training. However, there are instructions on using Google Earth to create a map in the tutorial document. And you're welcome to reach out with me with any questions if you would like to use some other sort of mapping system, including Google Earth, or if you have any questions about how to create a map. Okay. So yeah, I've uploaded my drawing that I drew of my reroute. The next question is, this is a new question for this year. It's a simple yes or no. Do you have GPS data for this project? This simply lets us know how far in the project planning process this is. So there's a yes or no. For my example project, I'm going to say, yes, I have it. There is also a reminder that if you do have it, to please email that to your RTC directly, so that your RTC also has that GIS or GPS data. And that's it, just a yes or no question. Okay, so continuing in our project location, there is a lat and long section. And again, we can use the the mapper to find our lat and long. When you have something like a trail reroute or a new trail, what you could do is pick the estimated center or location of that project and use that as your lat and long, because of course there could be several lat and longs along your route. But just pick an estimated center or an estimated central location for your lat and long. So to get your lat and long from the mapper, you can again click your measure tool, which is this triangle, and then click the location symbol, which kind of looks like a bullseye. And as you can see here, the lat and long come up. So my estimated center is somewhere around here. I would click it, and where this green is, this follows your mouse, but this will be my lat and long right here. So I could just, again, copy and paste these numbers into my trail project form for my lat and long. I'm going to do that right now. Here we go. Okay. All right, and that is it for location. That this information typically gives sufficient information for figuring out the general location. And if your project is very early in project planning, there will likely be some continued communications about the exact location, and that's fine. All right, so then we're done with our location, and we're gonna talk a bit about filling out the land management. So you just want to select what type of land your project is on. And again, you can select more than one, because often a project will go through more than one land manager or land ownership type. So for our example, in our Lowell Trail reroute, I'm just going to pretend that my project is on state and private land. I don't know if that's quite right for this example, but we're just going to pretend for this example. These questions have changed slightly. It was simply a change in the wording. I think this one is new. Before, it used to just come up for private, but we found it was pretty valuable to understand the land manager agreements, because sometimes landowners would better help determine, or the landowner situation would help determine kind of timelines or deadlines, or what kind of compliance might have already been done by the landowner. So I think this question is now comes up for all of them, whether there's landowner or land manager agreement support or concurrence for all land managers involved. For my example, I do not have this for both of my landowners, so I'm going to say no. And again, my project is 1.5 years out, so it would probably not be unusual to maybe not have this yet. And then because this can be, something that needs more description, there is a box here to further describe the situation with the landowner or land manager and those concurrence needed. So for my example, I might say the project was submitted to Michigan DNR, who is my state landowner, but we have not heard back yet with their official approval. And then because I also have a private landowner involved, I could say that there is a verbal agreement at the moment. But a written agreement is in progress. And that should be suitable. That's good. So yeah, just some details of where you're at with the landowners. Next, you'll input some contact information for your associated landowners. So I do have the private landowners. I'm just going to make up that his name is Jim Smith, private landowner. And then the state is involved, and I'll just make up that her name is Sarah Williams from the Michigan DNR. And then inputting some contact information from them. You might not have both their email, especially for, you might not have both their emails and their phone numbers, but whatever info you can give for contacting them. Email, and then let's make up their phone numbers. We'll say Jim is, yeah, so you happen to have their contact info. And I'll just note that often there is no contact on the NPS side with the landowners. This is just in case there's any questions that might need to reach out. As far as private landowners go, the NPS does not intend to reach out to them without first contacting your chapter or RTC. And actually, before I contact any landowners from the state, I reached out to the RTC before doing so to double check. So yeah, so this is useful. Okay. Next is any known or potential site concerns or issues. This could be things like known wetlands, a sensitive stream, or maybe a riparian area, any flooding concerns, or even any safety concerns that you have. So a very dangerous road walk or something like that. If you remember from earlier, I had mentioned in my example, there was a wet area on the southern end of the reroute. So that indicates to me there could be a wetland. So I would say potential wetland at southern end of reroute. There we go. All right, and we've made it to the end. We have one final question. Known permit or approval needs and status. So for example, NEPA, if you're working with the Forest Service, you might be aware of some NEPA being done. It could be a wetland or water crossing permit that you know your RTC might have submitted for you, or maybe your land manager has submitted for you. Or it could be maybe you know there's a cultural or historic feature in the area you might need some approval for. So in my example, again, there is that wet area. So for this, I might say something like had conversation with Michigan DNR about obtaining a wetland permit. But the permit has not been obtained yet. Something like that. All right, so another new option this year, and this is our biggest change from last year, and I hope this helps. Thanks to Matt Robotham for getting this added in here. It's great. There is now a save and continue later button. So if you'd like to save your work and come back to it later to finish, you can now click this link. Oh my gosh, we're already at 7:50. I am so sorry. Fortunately, we're almost done. So I'm going to click my save and continue. Sorry about that. Uh-oh, I wonder if it didn't save because I clicked save and continue. Uh-oh, sorry. Oh, look, it saved. That's great. Okay, so if I click my save and continue later button, I'm sorry, all this isn't working, but to save us some time, because we're getting close to 8 and I want you all to ask questions. What will happen is it will come up with a, it will save your form automatically and it will come up with a link that will return you to your form. There is a place to enter your email where that link will be emailed to you. I suggest doing that. And then once you enter your email, you will get an email with that link to return to your form. That link expires in 30 days or when the trail project forms ends on October 1st. So you could start filling it out, realize you don't have time, you need to find more information, save and continue later. So you do that and you come back to your form and then you can submit it. Once you click submit, you'll see the submittal screen. Assuming you entered your email, the project leader email, the entire form will be emailed to you. Okay, I'm sorry I got a little wonky at the end there. Please reach out if you have any questions about the end of the form here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the Q&A because we're running out of time here, and I'm sorry about that. Okay. Real quick, our dates and timelines starts on October 1st, or starts on September 1st, goes to October 1st. Should receive a notification of your timelines by late February. And those timelines are extremely variable depending on any one compliance project. And again, it does not necessarily end with signatures. All right, I'm opening up for Q&A. You can write in the chat, or there might already be some questions in the chat. I haven't looked at it yet. Or feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you might have. Again, sorry, the end of the form, those buttons didn't work. I'll double check those.
So Michael has 2 questions in the chat. Michael, did you want to just chime in, or would you like somebody just to read those for Steph?
Yeah, if we could just get a refresher on, is there an easy place to go to look at what we submitted last year, like online? We had some change organizations, some new people getting involved in this.
Oh, I see. That is a great question. No, I don't believe there currently is. Whoever submitted it last year would have gotten an email with the forms that were submitted last year. Your RTC might have submitted some, but there is not. However, feel free to reach out to me if you did have a change in some people who might not be there anymore and did have your last year's form. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to resend you the information that was submitted last year and what projects were submitted last year for your awareness.
Okay, good, thanks. And then the second question I had was, how about an update on any of the projects we submitted? Would that come from our RTC as well?
Your RTC or me, you can reach out at any time. I'm still working on any deadlines that were submitted last year. If you have any changes to those timelines, please let me know, because I'm working through them based on those. And we also have a conversation, the NPS and the NCTA have a conversation after projects are submitted to work out those timelines a bit better. But yes, you can always reach out for any changes in project timelines and things like that.
Okay, so the short summary of this is, if we have no changes and no new projects, we don't need to do anything at the chapter level, correct?
That's correct. But likely you'll hear from me asking questions as those project timelines come up. But yeah, that's correct. If there's nothing new and no new projects, you're good.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, I sent you a note in the chat, but I do know that Kenny helped fill out a lot of the projects for your chapter. So we should have a record somewhere if you just loop Kenny in on that conversation.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Val.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so in the chat, Kevin had asked a question. I already provided him with an answer in the text, but he asked for project orders. Since previous projects are not yet approved, do we still start at 1 for this set of projects? Will all of the previous projects be approved prior to starting the new set? Kevin, did you want to elaborate any more on your question?
Not really. I was more, I don't even know which projects I'm submitting, but I know there's talks about some projects might not be as intensive as the ones that we already submitted. So I was just thinking if we are getting the project, if we decide that one wants to rank above one of them that we submitted last year. I don't think so, but I just thought I'd ask that question. And what is the timeline for finishing like last year's projects? The approvals, that is.
I think if I'm understanding your question, I think if you feel that the projects you're submitting this year because they're new, or you they weren't submitted last year, but you want to submit it this year because you have all the details that you need. I would say if it was more, if you felt it took more precedence, I would let us know and give it a 1 if it was had more precedence over the ones you submitted last year, something like that. But do you agree, Chris? I'm not sure. I haven't quite looked through the chat yet. I'm not sure what your answer was.
Yeah, that is pretty almost exactly what I said, that if you submitted some projects last year and they haven't been approved yet for whatever reason, maybe that there's landowner agreements that are still tentative. I'm not sure why they might not have been approved yet. But if you've had some new projects come up that it's like, man, this is hot. We need to get started on this. This is a lot more important than what we put in last year. Then certainly you can let us know that, hey, we had a big flood, big portion of the trail washed away. This reroute is actually more important than the other reroute we submitted last year.
Okay, thank you.
And again, it isn't to say what is more important. It is just to communicate to us what you want us to get started on sooner than later. If we've got 100 projects that we're trying to do for folks, knowing how important those projects are, which ones to start on first, which ones we can triage till later, is very helpful for, across the entirety of the trail.
Okay.
And Connie Julian has a question. How much of this report would need to be filled out for a project on U.S. Forest Service land?
So part of the trail project form functionality is there are some questions with a little red asterisk next to it, and the form won't let you submit if those aren't filled out. So at the very least, the ones with the red asterisk would need to be filled in with something. I did notice that those of you who already have extensive trail proposal documents with the U.S. Forest Service, feel free to keep your form pretty minimal and just upload your trail proposal, and that will provide enough information. I don't want you to have to do a bunch of double work. But yeah, so at the very least, it's the red asterisk forms, and then you could upload your trail proposal that you already have with the Forest Service or the description you've already provided them. Any other questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. Okay.
Well, while people are wondering whether or not to ask their final questions, just a couple things real quick I would like to put out there for anyone who's new to this process, or maybe you're not new to the process, but you missed it last year, that this process is not something that we're using to say yes or no to a project that you propose. That's not the purpose. We're not judging a project and deciding whether or not you can do it. We're simply getting the awareness of the projects that you want to do and making sure that we're aware of it and making sure that we do the due diligence to follow the laws and give you the approvals that you need so that not only the resources are protected, but you're protected. This isn't anything to do about vetting a project. I will say that if somebody suggests that their proposal is to create a catapult to launch hikers across the river, we might have to have a conversation about that before we move forward with it. But by and large, we're not judging projects. We're just gaining an awareness of it and doing what we need to do to follow the laws and make sure that everything is good to go before we start putting shovels on the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Similarly, sorry, Steph,
Oh, go ahead.
and the National Park Service isn't doing this in a vacuum either. Once we get all the projects that the chapters and affiliates send to us, we're working very closely with the association to try to determine trail-wide what are the most pressing needs. Like I alluded to earlier, if we've got 100 projects and everyone wants to start by March 1st, somebody has to decide, well, some of them will be able to start at March 1st, but we can't get them all done by March 1st. How do we prioritize those? So we're working very closely with the association to make those types of hard decisions. And with that, I'll stop talking so you can talk, Steph. And
Yeah, I was just gonna, yeah, exactly. And I was gonna reiterate just to reach out with any questions, not just with how to submit on the form, but any questions you have about a specific project and how it fits into the process. The question earlier about understanding your projects from last year, your RTCs might have a lot of that information and a lot of the RTCs submitted projects. So yeah, just always, always feel free to reach out and ask those questions, and happy to help you through the process every step of the way. So. All right. Well, thank you all.
Yep, thank you. The review was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good evening.
Great.
thank you, everyone. Good, glad to see you here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your questions.
Have a good night.
Night.
Bye, everyone.